Story 1 by Trent H. 4 years ago, I booked an Airbnb for the holiday season when I planned to spend a week with my family during Christmas. The place was conveniently just a few miles away from them, and upon my arrival on December 20th, everything appeared to be as expected. The house was in a typical neighborhood, and overall I was content with my choice. I reached the place around 6 gang on the first day, but feeling exhausted, I decided to skip socializing until I had a good night's sleep. I spent the evening indoors watching TV and doing some work. I retired to bed just before 10 and fell asleep. However, in the middle of the night, I was stirred awake by a noise emanating from downstairs. In my semi-conscious state, I perceived a series of small thumps against the wall within the house. Although the sounds didn't evoke immediate concern, I attributed them to the house settling. I remained awake for only a brief moment, allowing myself to drift back to sleep without checking the time. I couldn't recall waking up again during the night. Come morning, the noises had slipped from my mind, and I presumed it was just the usual creaks and groans of the house. I informed my family of my arrival in town, and we made plans for dinner at their place. I spent the entire morning and afternoon relaxing at the Airbnb until it was time to leave. As I grabbed my bag and keys and approached the front door, I was unexpectedly met by a man standing on the porch. It caught me off guard, and I stared at him for a moment before asking, "Can I help you?" The man, without responding to my query, simply nodded and walked away. I observed him descending the sidewalk and disappearing down the street. The encounter left me unsettled. Why was he at the Airbnb, and how long had he been there without alerting me? Securing the premises, I drove to my parents' house for dinner, recounting the strange incident as an intriguing story. My family found it as eerie as I did, but we proceeded with dinner and other lively conversations. Throughout the night, though, my thoughts lingered on the mysterious man, and I couldn't shake the worry that my belongings at the Airbnb might be at risk. Around 9:00, I left the family gathering, returning to the Airbnb 15 minutes later. As I surveyed the surroundings for any signs of intrusion, everything appeared normal. Unlocking the door, I entered, dropping my keys and bag on the kitchen counter. Suddenly, a loud thump echoed through the house, similar to the ones I'd heard the previous night, but now louder and more distinct. Investigating the source, I cautiously approached a nearby room when another thump came from a door next to me. Startled, I recoiled, feeling a surge of adrenaline, and then discerned faint, heavy breathing from the other side. Grabbing my keys, I bolted for my car. Unsure of the situation, I called 911 and waited for their arrival. The ensuing search revealed a chilling discovery. The person was behind the garage door, which showed signs of attempted forced entry. Unbeknownst to me, the garage had a side door leading outside, left unlocked by the previous occupant. Whether the man on the porch was the intruder remains unknown. I decided to spend the rest of the week in a hotel, haunted by the realization that I had slept peacefully while someone attempted to break into the house below me. The motives behind the break-in remain a mystery, leaving me unnerved even 4 years later. Story 2 by Anonymous. A couple of weeks ago, I embarked on an expedition, securing an Airbnb townhouse in a quaint little town situated near the trails I planned to explore. Unacquainted with the surroundings, I arrived late after enduring a taxing 9-hour drive. The townhouse, nestled amidst others on the street, presented itself as decent from an external perspective, although it lacked a particularly modern allure. Following my identification and parking, I sent a text to the owner to apprise them of my arrival. While awaiting a passcode, I stood outside, gazing down the street. Out of the blue, a nearby door swung open, and a man with a welcoming smile stepped out. He introduced himself as the Airbnb host, swiftly ushering me inside and mentioning his proximity next door should I require anything. The unexpected encounter did not take an awkward turn, and he promptly left. Settling into the bedroom, I took a brief tour of the house before retiring for the night. The following day commenced with a hasty breakfast, succeeded by a 4-hour hike on a nearby trail. Returning to the townhouse at 7 p.m., I sensed an odd atmosphere upon entering. Items in my room appeared slightly rearranged, instigating a sense of unease. Though nothing seemed missing, an inkling persisted that something had been tampered with. After a fruitless 30-minute search, I attributed it to jitters about staying in an unfamiliar locale and brushed off the disconcerting feeling. That evening, I warmed up a frozen meal, engrossed in YouTube on my phone until I retired at 11:00 p.m. The bedroom, situated at the terminus of the main hallway opposite the front door in the single-story townhouse, proved challenging for me, accustomed to sleeping on upper floors. As I lay awake, fluctuating between consciousness and sleep, I perceived a deliberate soft creak, the front door opening from the other end of the house. Sitting up, my attention honed in on the door, yet the noise subsided. An hour into the night, still awake and waiting to succumb to sleep, I heard a noise emanating from outside my room, a door gently creaking open. The sound carried an intentional quality, as if someone were striving for discretion. Alarmed, I rose, cautiously cracking open the bedroom door to peer down the hallway. The subdued illumination from the porch light exposed the front door slightly ajar. Closing and locking my door noiselessly, I promptly dialed the police. During the call, another sound reached me just outside my bedroom door. An eerie shadow suggested someone's presence. Muting myself, I bided my time until they departed before continuing my report. While the intruder had vanished by the time law enforcement arrived, indications pointed to someone having been inside, including discernible shoe prints. Despite my suspicion of the Airbnb host's involvement, the police unearthed no corroborating evidence. The sole anomaly lay in the front door being open without any signs of a struggle. With nothing amiss in the house during my absence, the intruder's motives remain shrouded in uncertainty. The lingering unease about what might have transpired, and the unsettling question of whether they still lurk in the vicinity, persistently occupy my thoughts. Story 3 by Lucas. Reflecting on the past New Year's celebration, my two closest friends and I yearned for a departure from the usual festivities. Opting to steer clear of colossal parties, we embarked on a quest for a more intimate setting and decided to rent a house for the night. The allure of escaping our cramped dorm rooms heightened the excitement of having a house to ourselves. Taking the reins of planning, Jason, one of my friends, secured an Airbnb on the outskirts of our town. The chosen place, more akin to a rustic cabin than a conventional house, boasted an all-wood structure and classic cabin features. While similar-looking cabins dotted the vicinity, their strategic spacing created an illusion of seclusion and solitude. The anticipation of spending New Year's Eve in this unique abode heightened our enthusiasm. Although the interior lacked opulence, the budget-friendly nature of the accommodation offset any expectations of luxury. We immersed ourselves in the coziness of the living room, engaging in lively conversations and savoring the joy of each other's company. As the clock neared 6 in the evening, Christian, one of my companions, embarked on a trip to the store to procure snacks and beverages. Meanwhile, Jason and I remained ensconced in the living room, immersed in our camaraderie, when an unexpected knock echoed through the cabin. Exchanging quizzical glances, we found it peculiar for someone to be seeking entry into an Airbnb in such a secluded locale. Approaching the door with caution, I noted the presence of a metal latch and cautiously opened it enough to reveal a stranger standing on the doorstep. Ordinarily, I would refrain from opening the door to an unknown individual, but the setting's unfamiliarity led me to entertain the notion that it might be the host. To our surprise, the visitor wore a displeased expression and conveyed his message in a disrespectful and obstinate tone, urging us to maintain silence and avoid disturbing the neighborhood. His demeanor verged on threatening despite our lack of noise-making activities, and the considerable distance between the houses should have precluded any disturbances. Unwilling to engage in a confrontation, I nodded in agreement, closed the door, and secured the latch. Strangely, the stranger pounded on the door once again mere seconds later. Ignoring him, I exchanged a bewildered glance with Jason, contemplating the possibility of the man being unhinged. Eventually he departed, and upon Christian's return, we recounted the bizarre encounter to him, met with skepticism on his part. The ensuing 3 hours whisked by as we indulged in a movie marathon and dabbled in games on Jason's Switch. Approaching midnight, A peculiar noise emanated from outside, reminiscent of an object hitting the ground, followed by the unmistakable sound of shattering glass near the entrance. Hastening to the window, we observed the same stranger from earlier standing next to Christian's car, now ensconced in shards of shattered glass from the windshield. In the grip of a psychotic state, the man brandished a metal baseball bat, pacing erratically and displaying irrational behavior. Fueled by anger, Christian ventured outside to confront him. Jason and I rushed to intervene, but before we reached the doorway, a gunshot reverberated through the cabin. Paralyzed with fear, I braced for the worst, only to witness a near miraculous sight as Christian sprinted back inside, swiftly locking the door behind him. The subsequent moments saw more gunshots, striking the cabin's side, accompanied by the man relentlessly assaulting the front door with the bat. Abruptly as it began, the assailant fled the scene. Subsequent investigations revealed he had no connection to the Airbnb's neighbors. His identity, residence, and the motive behind his violent outburst remained shrouded in mystery. The encounter proved to be a perilous and utterly unpredictable episode that brought us perilously close to losing our lives.